Let's go.
Let's go.
Oh, did you want to?
Sorry, I'll let you.
Next time.
I'm in love with you.
Snap out of it.
I'll have what she's having.
Too many guys think I'm a concept, or I complete them, or I'm gonna make them alive. I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind. Don't assign me yours.
Caustic wit is my religion.
I would make a great queen because I am so stubborn.
I say when it comes to stardom and Lauren, there are no accidents.
Hi, Karen Peterson.
Welcome to Citizen Tame, the podcast where we definitely remember how to use technology and press record when we're about to talk to you. I'm Karen Peterson, joined as always by the amazing, incredible Lauren Humphries Brooks.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm so glad that people will get to hear this conversation because it was such a good conversation last week.
It was a good one. We had a great conversation.
We had a great chat, and then we both just like at the same time we both were like, "Oh no!"
It was weird how we both realized it at the exact same time.
Yeah,
like that was really funny, and still really sad. Anyway. How are you?
I'm doing fine, despite like the madness of this past week. Yes, I'm doing well. I'm upstate for Christmas. Got out of New York before some of the craziness started, which I didn't intend necessarily. But yes, I'm somewhere else.
Well, good. Yeah, we did have a little bit of a weird week, but hopefully it's over. We'll see. So. Yeah. Anyway. So we're gonna try to not recreate last week's discussion because we can't, because it was just that amazing. But but you know, we'll bring you some good stuff today. So one of the things that we definitely wanted to talk about, and let's start with this, and that can lead into our discussion of first time watches of 2021. But about a week and a half ago, Lena Wertmuller, the first woman ever nominated for the Academy Award for Best Director, and not the first one that deserved it, and not the first time she deserved to be nominated, but she was for Seven Beauties in 1976. Anyway, she passed away at the age of 92, which, talk about a good run. Anyway, so, you, Lauren, had not actually seen any of her films before, and then now this past week or so you've gotten to discover a couple. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I got to watch just after she passed, and I said this on Twitter, I said this in a couple places, that I was sad that there's certain directors that like I don't, I intend to experience and then I just don't, and then they die, and I'm like, oh, I should probably watch those movies that I've been putting off. And unfortunately, Lena Wertmuller is one of those. But it did mean that I watched Seven Beauties last week, and just recently I watched Swept Away, which has been on my list for a very, very long time. I think ever since the Guy Ritchie remake came out,
which I never watched,
which
I still haven't.
I haven't seen either, but I kind of want to now, because I'm like, what did you do to this? Because I really sort of want to know. This is it's a film, definitely.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to actually get to experience some of her work, because one of the things that I think, and Seven Beauties definitely has this in more so in a lot of ways than Swept Away, is this use of grotesque, and particularly grotesque in Seven Beauties when it comes to women and the representation of women. And it's interesting to see that from this female director, female writer also, who is, making this film that is so focused on masculinity and presentations of masculinity, and the appearance and the treatment of women in her films is really interesting. And I'm not quite certain what to make of it necessarily, because part of what she's doing is definitely using sex and gender as a dialogue also about politics, about class, about communism and fascism, and about Italy itself. And they're definitely very Italian films. not least because Giancarlo Giannini is a very Italian actor. But I liked both films. I think that probably on balance, I enjoyed watching Swept Away a bit more, just because it's a, in terms of what it's showing, it is less serious, although it's serious in its own way. But there is a good bit more humor in Swept Away than there was in Seven Beauties. Mm-hmm. But yeah, both fantastic films. I'm planning on watching more of her stuff, and Seven Beauties in particular is just, it's rough. It's a difficult film, and I was not prepared for quite how difficult it was going to be, but very worthwhile experience at the same time.
Yeah, the way that the tone shifts in that film is really interesting, and sometimes it's kind of subtle, and then other points it's just like, woo, that took a sharp right turn, but it does it very, very well. So it is sometimes extremely difficult to watch, but the way that it's cut together and the way that it's paced, it works. And it's a balance that some directors just can't figure out, and some do it really, really well. So,
well, yeah, and despite those tonal shifts, there's a continuity to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's a jumping around. It doesn't feel like she's not being I don't want to say deliberately, she's not like really emphasizing the contrasts of what she's showing,
right? And that's why it works. Yeah
Everything flows into each other. So some of the I do really like the humor of him trying to get rid of the body in some of the flashback sections.
It's a great scene,
and just, it's funny, it's funny, it's slapstick almost. And then you have that juxtaposed against the deep seriousness of the concentration camp scenes, and yet there's also humor in that too, and it's a very dark, bleak humor. But there's that sense of like, this is ridiculous, right? That at some level it's just like, this whole structure is ridiculous. Everything that is happening is ridiculous, but it's happening, and it's also deadly serious.
Yeah. One other, because I've seen 3 of her films now, and so the other one that I saw, which was a first time watch for me this year, because I had previously seen Seven Beauties and Swept Away. I don't even remember when, but I've seen both of them a couple of times. But my new find was The Seduction of Mimi, which I think of the 3, I think even more than Swept Away, because in Swept Away, she just gets so frustrating that's like, there are times I want to slap the shit out of her too, like, knock her overboard, make her drown. I don't know.
Exactly. There are definitely a few points. Like, I do like in Swept Away, I don't mean to interrupt your talking about
No, you're fine.
But I really like in Swept Away that you're very much on his side at the beginning, because just like, oh my God, how does someone not push her overboard? Like, and then I think the audience sympathy definitely shifts, and it becomes increasingly complicated as the film goes on. Mm-hmm. And it's really effective. It's, talking about those tonal shifts. It's like, oh, I'm actually feeling differently about these characters now than I did in the initial beginning. But yeah, you're just like, oh my God. So yes, go ahead and hit her. Anything that will shut her up. Like, dear God.
Yeah, exactly. So, but The Seduction of Mimi is one where basically the premise of it is that he plays this guy. He's always this Sicilian character. And in this case, there's like a local election, and he doesn't want to support this one particular candidate who does not go with his views and is, mob connected. And because he won't support this guy, he loses his job and ends up having to leave town. So he goes up north to Turin to work, and leaves his wife behind, and ends up taking up with a girlfriend and rising through the ranks at his job. And it very much is a movie that, like, politics was a huge theme for her. I mean, every movie is political, but that's a specific theme in so many of her films, Lena Wertmüller's films. And it's especially apt, I think, in Seduction of Mimi and Swept Away. Well, all of them. but yeah, this one, I think it's really funny. It's funny to see where, like, you kind of can agree with where he's at, and like, yeah, you take that stance, you stand up for your beliefs, but then the choices that he makes along the way become increasingly problematic, and like, you very quickly lose sympathy for him, and then as he's making dumber choices, which I think of the three, it's by far the funniest too. But it's like he starts to face down some consequences for his choices too, and so yeah, it's I think it's the funniest, and it's a little bit like, in some ways, it's the most satisfying.
Well, I still have not seen that. I'm definitely going to watch some more of her films. But yeah, that's one that I'll put on my list, and hopefully get to it before, we're talking about this next year.
Yeah. Well, Criterion does have a set of them. I think Love and Anarchy is on there too, which is one I'm going to watch next. I think there's like 7 of them. Mm-hmm. And they're the same films, I think, are also available on Canopy. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think The Seduction of Mimi is on that list, though.
Oh, is it not? Okay, I think I watched it on Canopy, so.
Yeah, I think that's one of the few that I noticed wasn't actually on there. And I was like, but that's the one I want to see.
Oh, according to Letterboxd, it is.
Oh, okay, maybe mm-hmm. I was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's
maybe they added it this week. Who knows?
Yeah, it could be. She's a fantastic director, and I think I said this a while ago, fairly close to after she had passed away. One of the things that makes me mad about this a little bit is that one of the reasons why I haven't seen any Lena Wertmuller films is that they were never emphasized to me in my film education, right? So, back in film school, we talked about Italian neorealism, we talked about Fellini and Rossellini and De Sica and Antonioni and all of these directors, and somehow, if she was mentioned, it was as a footnote. It was never, and she's not neorealism at all, but she definitely fits in with a lot of like some of Fellini's later work, with the Italian cinema of that period, and yet she's so often like treated as just, and she was the first female to be nominated for an Academy Award, female director to be nominated for an Academy Award. And it's like, okay, why are we not talking about these films as being incredibly important films in the same breath with people like Fellini and Rossellini?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. And so that brings us into our discussion of what are some of the discoveries that you made this year, film-wise, and for both of us, it's a couple of Wertmuller films, so that's awesome. But what is another one for you, or a collection of films that you discovered for the first time this year, or finally got to see, cross off your list?
There are no, actually, speaking of Italian films, so one of the things that I tried to do this year was to watch more Fellini, which I have not. For whatever reason, Fellini just has never quite connected with me. And so I'd seen a few of his films. It's 8.5 is the one that was taught in film school, which isn't surprising. It is a great film, etc. But so I was like, I need to see a little bit more Fellini. So I saw La Strada, I saw I Vitelloni, I saw another one that now I'm blanking on. It was one of his earlier films. But in watching it, I was like, oh, La Strada, this is a great film. It's brilliant. And it absolutely is. It's also horribly depressing. Mm-hmm. And I turned it on and I was like, oh, I did not realize that this would make me want to die, but thank you. Yeah, so it's a great film. Undoubtedly, I rated it very high on Letterboxd and everything, but I was also just like, why are these so sad? I need to watch something happier than this. 8.5 is a joyful experience in comparison.
Oh dear. Well, on the subject of joyful experiences, one of the films that I watched for the first time this year was A Town Called Panic.
Woo! Yes, I just recently saw that too.
Yay! Yeah, I just watched it a couple months ago. and it's just so cute. The animation is really, it's actually, the animation is part of the humor, I think, because it's not, it's not like hand drawn, it's not computer generated, it's from 2009. It's these little toys, like the little, old school, probably made out of metal toys of like a cowboy and an Indian and a horse and little pigs and like the farm set that we used to have and stuff like that. And they're animated, so it's stop motion animation. But it's funny, it's so random. It's it's these two characters realize that they're all roommates. It's a cowboy, an Indian, and a horse. They're all roommates, and the cowboy and the Indian realize that it's Horse's birthday and they need to do something for him. And then of course the plan goes all awry and it leads into just a crazy set of adventures that gets increasingly weirder and increasingly funnier.
I love how the plan goes awry in that one too. Like,
Yes.
and how the solution that they find for it, and you're just like, oh my god, these
Like,
are
why do you think that would work? But then again, you've got a horse living in your upstairs house, like, yeah.
taking showers and everything.
Yep.
Yeah, I really liked the sensation as I was watching that film. I was like, this is, it's very surreal, but it's connected. And I was like, what does this really remind me of? And I realized partway through, I was like, this is exactly what, the kind of games that you played as a kid. Right, so you'd have like, oh yeah, horse, cowboy, and Indian are all roommates, and it's Horse's birthday. Oh, they got to do something for Horse's birthday, and then this happens, and then the entire world explodes, and then they go under the water, and they're searching for the thing, and then someone steals his walls. All of that stuff.
Yeah. Like if you've ever sat down and had a conversation with a 4-year-old who's playing with toys and asked them to tell you about their toys, this is the kind of story that you get.
Exactly. Yeah, it reminded me of some like the games I used to play with my Playmobil, and then there were horses involved, and there was like an internecine war between the horses and the hospital, and like all kinds of stuff going down.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very clever. It's very funny. It's very French. So that's one of mine. Really quickly before we go back to yours, I was just gonna read off a couple of the comments that we got, because we did ask, like, not just necessarily older movies, but ones from 2021. We wanted to know about those too. So Mason Purrier at Mason Mumbles said, I've kept up very little with releases this year, but I did see Pig and really liked it. I saw The Truman Show, which I loved and is still screwing with me. I also saw all the Chucky movies, and the best one was Curse of Chucky, though the best horror movie I saw this year was Saint Maud. Thank you, Mason. Yes, Curse of Chucky is the best one. BC Wallen said Lonesome from 1928, one of my top discoveries of the year. Connor Grote said, for 2021 releases, The Courier is still one of my favorites. For non-2021, Lucky with Harry Dean Stanton, The People Under the Stairs, and Ken Russell's Tommy were my favorite first watches. Oh, and Censor was a great movie from this year, too. So that, I was just making sure that was all of those. So thank you guys so much for sharing those. Lauren, what's another one of yours?
Another one that I wanted to mention, I actually just recently thought of this because Stephen Sondheim passed away, is I think the only film script he actually wrote, and he wrote it with Tony Perkins. So that's an interesting combination to begin with. But it's The Last of Sheila,
which I have not seen.
And it was available for a while. I think that it might still be available to rent on Prime. I think it just came out on Blu-ray as well. It's wild. It's like the basic plot is that a woman is killed in a hit and run accident, or supposedly a hit and run accident, in sort of the opening sequence. And a year later, her husband invites everybody who was at the party where she was killed, like after which she was killed, to their yacht, and says, we're going to play a game. And what develops is that basically he suspects that one of them was involved in her death, deliberately killed her. And he's kind of playing a cat and mouse game with all of these different people. And it's funny. It is very acerbic. It's everyone is involved in Hollywood and the film industry. and everyone is just like sniping at each other, very nasty to one another. They're alcoholics and drug addicts, and like her husband is played by James Coburn, who's a producer and who's an absolute asshole, who actually doesn't seem to really care about her, but is just like enjoying the game itself. It's very funny. It's very clever. And it takes some interesting twists and turns. So it's kind of a riff on the whodunit, but in a very sort of 70s style.
Yeah, I remember everyone was talking about it when Knives Out came out.
Yeah, it's a similar sensation. It's a lot like some of the Poirot films from the 1970s, where you've got this big cast of famous people, all of whom are the murder suspects, and they all get stuck together on a boat or a train.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to see it. I need to look for it. So that sounds fun. I missed two more that were quote tweets, so I forgot to click on the quote tweets. So one was from Tomas Odomino. He said, Casablanca, Searching, Singing in the Rain, Crawl, Space Sweepers, The Boy and the Beast, Dune, Master and Commander, and Some Like It Hot. That's a pretty great first time viewing list.
Yeah, I want to see some of those for the first time again.
Yeah. And then Brendan at BLC Agnew said, a sampling, The Tale of Princess Kaguya, Fear Streets, Space Sweepers. What is Space Sweepers? Why do I not know this movie?
I don't know. I've never heard of it. I'm going to search for it right now.
Yeah, thank you. Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. Hell yeah. Rurouni Kenshin, Ravenous, Riders of Justice, and Titan. So thank you everyone for sending in yours. Let's see. Another one of mine, this is more of a collection of films, and I won't go into a lot of detail because we did a whole episode on it, but I really enjoyed discovering the films of Lois Weber this year. And a couple of them have still stuck with me. I really enjoyed Suspense. Was just so fun, like just such a fun lesson, I guess, in filmmaking and creating that tension and I Discontent is one that I surprisingly have talked about a lot, like to other people outside of, the film world, like throughout the year. And so that's kind of, I don't know, like her films have just stayed with me, but I really love, The Blot. So that one was just really, really great. So, yeah, so it's one of those things where, again, I'm not going to go into too much talking about the film specifically now, because you can listen to our whole Lois Weber episode. But just in terms of films that I watched for the first time that really stuck with me, this is one, The Blot is one where it just really... every year it seems like I kind of discover a film or two. Last year was The Big House, where... it just really drives home the point of some of the fights and some of the debates that we've been having for such a long time, and certain social issues where it's like, how is this still something that we're working through? Why have we still not found a solution to this 100 years later? In this case, it's the fact that educators have no money, like people who are responsible for, anyway, we don't need to relitigate that, but it's the social issues that we're still dealing with 100 years later that still haven't been fixed.
Yeah, those issues of class and gender and power and who has money and who doesn't, and who needs money and who doesn't, and all of that stuff. Yeah, it's, on the one hand, it's kind of depressing because you're like, how is this a thing? But on the other, you're just like, well, these are issues that have kind of been a part of humanity for at least since we've been industrialized, and in a certain sense even before that, in a different sense before that. But yeah, and it's amazing that someone like Lois Weber was articulating that so well, 100 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Space Sweepers, by the way, is a Korean film. It's on Netflix, and it's after snatching a crashed space shuttle in the latest debris chase, Spaceship Victory's crew members find a 7-year-old girl inside. They realize that she's the human-like robot wanted by UTS Space Guards and decide to demand a ransom in exchange. And I don't particularly recognize any of the main cast, but Richard Armitage is in it as well. But it also stars, and I'm going to butcher the Korean names, I'm really, really sorry, Song Joong Ki, Kim Tae-ri, Anupam Tripathi, and Kim Hyung-ji.
Awesome.
So, yeah. And it's directed by Jo Sung-hee. It's on Netflix.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for mentioning that, because now that is going in my Netflix queue, and I'm going to watch it this weekend. Awesome. Okay, so what's another one for you? Another first-time watch?
Well, another one, and again, we don't have to go into too much detail about this, but because we talked about it earlier, is Elaine May's A New Leaf, which I just absolutely adore, and you know, fits in with some of what we were talking about with Lena Wertmuller, and that kind of the use of satire and parody to actually do something really interesting and actually tell kind of a bleak story in a very funny and bizarre way. And it just kind of reinforces how much more respect we need to give female directors, and particularly people like Elaine May and Lena Wertmuller, who just need to be talked about more and be more of a part of the conversation, along with some of these male directors that we just accept as brilliant because they are, but these women need to be included as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was definitely another one on my list too, pretty high up, because it was a first time watch for me as well. And it's very funny, but it's also, yeah, like you said, it's very serious in some ways. It deals with really serious things, but it's very funny in the way that it does that. And I love Walter Matthau so much. And it was just, this is one where it was my first introduction to Elaine May as a director, and I was just like, man, why has it taken me so long to see her work, you know? And it's because, like you say, we just don't give female directors enough attention. We don't talk about them enough.
And particularly when a female director, someone like Elaine May, makes a movie that then is like derided. So Ishtar, I think, well, Ishtar did. It very much damaged her career, and she retreated as a result of it as a director. And that's, I think that in a lot of ways that has continued to kind of follow her in terms of the cultural conversation, that people seem to remember that, but don't remember, you know, everything else. By the way, Ishtar, as I think I said when we talked about her earlier, Ishtar is not a bad movie. You have to understand it as a parody. You can't understand it as like a serious attempt at making a road movie. And that's a dialogue that I think people like continue to miss, and definitely missed when the film came out.
Wait, are you saying that people need to be literate in film to...
No.
We can't say that, Lauren. That's offensive.
I would never say that. I would never, ever say that. Yes, I know it's elitist and whatever. It's just like, no, I think that you should know what the fuck you're talking about before you say words.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so let me see. What's another one for you?
I have way too many. I've been scanning through my letterbox again. I was just like, you know, what else have I seen? Actually, one of the ones, and again, I think I've talked about a number of these, but 5-star.
That's the thing, is like so many of mine we've already talked about.
You know, talking about films that are still painfully topical, and were made ages ago. 5-Star Final is one that, like, I don't know, it just really affected me. And maybe, you know, I know that I'm not the only person that felt this way. It's very on the nose, but it's on Criterion Channel right now. It's a pre-code film about a newspaper editor who's basically being pushed by his newspaper to just, if he can't find headlines, manufacture them, basically. And so he digs up this old murder case about a woman who killed, I'm trying to remember if she killed her husband or she killed her lover, but and you know, wound up actually not being, she was put on trial for it, but she did not wind up getting convicted for it, etc. And he digs this all up again and basically finds this woman again. This is 20 years later. and discovers things like she has a daughter who's about to get married, who has no knowledge of her mother's past. And it's a very intense and remarkably moving film. Edward G. Robinson is fantastic. But there's a line in it where his secretary says to him, you know, it's something like when a woman being crucified is always news. And it's just like, and she just like encapsulates everything. And she's essentially saying, like, you are bringing this woman's past back up. You are trying to crucify her in public in order to make a headline. And it's such a fantastic film. It's very short. It's like, I think it's like 1931, 1932, something like that. And so topical. Again, it's that sense of like, we're going to dig things up. We're going to slut shame. We're going to harm people's lives in order to make kind of fodder, in order to create this sensationalism, right? And specifically about women and about the treatment of women. So I really do recommend it. It's on Criterion Channel right now.
Awesome. Thank you. I was looking at some movies from this year that I wanted to mention. And I think just in terms of movies that are just purely entertaining, have no real, like, literally popcorn movies, you know? And I just was thinking about this one because I was telling some friends last night to watch it. I have a couple of married friends, and she was like, this is exactly what I needed. And he was like, why the hell did you recommend this movie? And that was A Castle for Christmas on Netflix.
Yeah. Which my parents and I just watched, and I am so proud that I managed to do it. I was just like, well, there is this movie that we can see.
It's just so freaking delightful. Like, it's very fluffy. It literally is just like a whipped cream movie. Like, there's no density to it at all. You can predict everything that's about to happen before it does. And that's why I liked it so much. But it's just cute. It's like a Hallmark movie with a bigger budget. Because it's on Netflix.
and a good director and good actors, you know, and that was nice. I think that helps to kind of keep it moving. It's just like, oh, it's not, you know, it's not poorly written or anything like that. It is deeply silly.
Yes. Yes, but it's freaking adorable. And Mary Lambert directed it, by the way.
And so many times during that movie, it was just like, all right, you can buy my castle. But and it's just like, oh my god, but I have to continue to live in it. Of course you do. We always have this Christmas party for the village on Christmas Eve. Of course you do. Of course. They're riding horses at one point. Like, of course they can ride horses. Why would they not ride horses? The only thing, I object to the fact that there is no scene of them having a snowball fight or making a snowman.
Yeah,
because
that's
that
true.
Needed to happen.
Mm-hmm. That was missing.
The local knitting circle at the pub.
I want to go to Scotland and join a knitting group.
Oh my god. I have to say, I spent many years in Scotland. I never saw people knitting in a pub, but I'm certain that it happens because some of those cliches are actually true.
Anyway, it's freaking delightful. I recommend it if you're just looking for something silly that you can just, you know, not have to think too deeply or feel too much, because you know exactly how it's gonna go. And, yeah.
Well, I was actually thinking about this morning. I was thinking about how you know, we're so willing to accept some of the cliches of action movies, but we're less, and not say like, oh, this is stupid, oh, this is silly, you know, why am I watching this, etc. But we're less willing to do that with rom-coms or, you know, quote, chick flicks. And that there is that little edge of sexism too, because you're just like, oh yeah, we're willing to accept that, like, of course the villain is, you know, someone who has this vendetta against the hero, because that's an action movie trope. But we're not willing to accept that, you know, of course you have a Christmas party for the village every year, and now, oh, you're the landlord of the village, and you're just trying to save them all.
Exactly. On that note, Barb and Star also, but that's a little deeper than A Castle for Christmas.
It's a very deep film.
It is.
Barbara the Star is a very deep film.
It is. But after watching A Castle for Christmas, don't you just kind of desperately want Mary Lambert to direct like a Christmas time horror movie?
I do, because there were definitely points in that story where I was like, is someone gonna die, or is there like gonna be some really freaky twist? Because I kept on waiting for that to come up, but
Yeah, it does not. It does not. So if you have not watched it yet, there's no scary twist. It's just a cute movie. Anyway, what's another one for you? Let's do like one more and then we'll switch to our 2022 resolutions.
All right, that sounds good. Well, I mean, I think closing it out for me to talk about how everything changes and yet everything stays the same. I watched Town Bloody Hall for the first time this year, which is a great documentary. It is, I believe, still on the Criterion Channel. And it is a debate, I guess. It's kind of structured as a debate, but it turns into more of a free-for-all between Norman Mailer and a panel of feminists, including Germaine Greer, Jill Johnston, Diana Trilling, and Jacqueline Ceballos. And they're discussing, this is the early 70s, so they're discussing the issue of women's liberation, of feminism, of the women's lib movement, in this kind of debate / moderator format at New York City's town hall venue. And this is one of those films that like rapidly, and you can see it happening, rapidly goes off the rails, in large part because Mailer basically is there to kind of take these women down a peg, and that's how he behaves. And it winds up becoming this sort of this argument between Mailer's very misogynist but very kind of typical masculine prerogative. And you know, you have to say someone like Mailer was very smart. This is not a dumb person, right? So the arguments that he's making are not stupid arguments. They are very intelligent arguments, and they're also very misogynist and anti-feminist arguments. And you've got this group of women who are getting increasingly annoyed and are partially trying to score points on him, but are also, you know, actually being like, no, you have to take this seriously. You have to take us seriously. And you have to understand what it actually means to be a woman in the United States in the early 70s. And despite the fact that, you know, there's definitely a datedness to it, and some of the arguments that they're having are very much a part of the 1970s. What upset me at the same time is like, we're still having these debates, we're still having these arguments, we're still dealing with men who are intelligent men, and even in a lot of ways very well-meaning men who just do not understand the experience of being a woman, and in this case you're talking about cisgender women, but any woman in the US, and the shit that we have to deal with, the shit that we have to face. And this was a conversation that was going on in the 70s. You know, as we were saying, this was a conversation that was going on in the 20s. Mm-hmm. And you do kind of want to be like, when is this going to end? So it's a great film. It made me so mad, but it's also very funny, and it is very nice to, after a while, basically see these very tough, very intelligent women beating the shit out of Norman Mailer verbally. Like, it is satisfying in that sense.
Well, that sounds great. I have not watched it yet, but I will. One of the final one I'm going to mention is one that you convinced me to watch, and that was Theater of Blood.
Every time that movie comes up, I'm like, yeah!
That was, I don't know what just happened to your mic. That was weird, but it just kind of like faded out. But anyway, but Theater of Blood was one that I know you had talked about it a lot. Like, it wasn't just like this year wasn't the first time I'd heard of that movie, but I did finally get around to watching it, and it it was just, I think being on Twitter, going back to things that haven't changed, I think being on Twitter and seeing like the way that people articulate their opinions about films, and the lack of fluency sometimes about movies, just made this one just like, wow, this is kind of relatable, because it's like there's bad reviews, but then there's bad reviews. So anyway, this one I enjoyed seeing a lot of vicious violence against against critics, which is funny since I am one, but you know, even sometimes I probably deserve it, so.
It's a very satisfying movie. You know, it's talking about movies that just make you kind of feel good about stuff. It's a very satisfying movie, and a lot of that really is just due to Vincent Price, like being like, oh, I get to do Shakespeare. I get to do Hammy Shakespeare. I get to do all of the murder scenes in Shakespeare. Okay, I'm down for that. Yeah, it's a very clever film, and Price is having a delightful time, and Diana Rigg is having a delight. Everyone, actually, all of the actors in this movie are just having a lot of fun, including the ones that get murdered.
Yes, and it's some very, very creative death scenes. So yeah. Yes. So one of the things I like about it is that many of them are not predictable. Like they do some of the kind of common ones, the more known ones, like the Othello Desdemona scene, right? And then some of the others are just like, wait a minute, where the fuck is that from? Like, oh, that's from Cymbeline. Why are we doing Cymbeline? No one reads Cymbeline. There's some deep cuts, literally. Yeah. Anyway, it is on Tubi and Hoopla, so if you have not watched it, you can watch it for free. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some of the movies that we want to see in 22. These can be new releases from 2022. These can be movies that we haven't gotten around to yet that are on our list, and we're going to make sure to watch them. So, just to get us started, we did get some submissions from a couple of listeners. So Connor said, for 2022, I'm really excited about The Batman, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, Mission Impossible 7, Halloween Ends, Pinocchio, Guillermo del Toro's, Killers of the Flower Moon. I'm excited to hear what else is coming as it gets announced. And then Tim B said, Nope, from Jordan Peele. Next Goal Wins from Taika Waititi, Don't Worry Darling by Olivia Wilde, The Northman from Robert Eggers, She Said from Maria Schrader, Bros from Nicholas Stoller, and Everything Everywhere All at Once from Daniels. So, Lauren, what's one of yours?
Those are some good ones.
Yeah.
I've been really hopeless about like paying attention to what is coming out when, because time has no meaning anymore.
Yeah.
Tim mentioning The Northman, I was like, oh, that's right, we got a new Robert Eggers coming up. I am definitely looking forward to that, just because I love how fucking weird Robert Eggers is. And I'm, you know, we've seen The Witch, we've seen The Lighthouse. No clue what this film is actually going to wind up looking like. The synopsis is that this is an epic revenge thriller about a Viking prince seeking justice for his murdered father. It's just like, that's probably not going to be what it'll be about. But it's got Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe, Anya Taylor-Joy. It's a great cast, so I am excited about this one.
Yeah, it's weird because I didn't love either of his first two films. I think one of them is better than the other, but I still get, like, I'm fascinated by him. Like, even if I don't love the films, I'm fascinated to watch them. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, too. For sure. Yeah, it's hard to look at 22 and think, like, oh, I'm excited for these movies, because who knows if they're going to come out. Like, let's be honest. We don't know what's going to actually end up getting to be released when it's currently scheduled to. But assuming some of these movies do come out, I mean, we're getting 2 Taika Waititi films.
2, really? What's the
2.
other one?
Thor: Love and Thunder.
Oh, that's right.
Uh-huh. And honestly, between the two, that's the one I'm more looking forward to. Next Goal Wins, I'm sure, will be fun, but I don't like Fassbender, and he's like the star of the movie, and so I don't know, we'll see. But I love Thor, and I love Waititi's version of Thor, so I mean, Come on. Yeah. You can
That'd
laugh.
be fun.
It's fine.
And are you excited about Mission Impossible?
Of course I am. I'm excited. So not only do we get 2 Taika films, we get 2, hopefully, Tom Cruise films too, because we got Mission Impossible 7 and finally Top Gun Maverick.
Are we sure? Are we sure that Top Gun Maverick exists?
I am not sure of anything anymore. Like, this is what I've been promised. We'll see if it happens. I don't know. What's another one for you?
Well, it was mentioned, Killers of the Flower Moon,
Yeah.
Which I have mixed feelings about, and I understand, like a number of people. I'm always excited for a new Scorsese film, and I'm excited about this one. At the same time, I understand why there are issues with it, and I will be interested to see what kind of a conversation develops around them. Hopefully, a nuanced conversation, which is of course a lot to expect from contemporary film criticism, but the subject matter itself is very fraught when it comes to particularly a white male director addressing it, but at the same time it does sound really interesting, and Scorsese at the very least is going to produce a dialogue, and he's going to be sensitive to it, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be good or that he's the one really to tell this story, but I am really intrigued by it.
Yeah, I am too. It looks interesting, and I think that as far as older white male directors go, he's one that definitely pulls in people with different points of view, and he's such a champion of different voices that it's interesting to me that he's the one that he chose to be the one to tell this story. But I also think he can do it justice. I hope he can. So yeah, it'll be interesting. A big one for me just became a big one for me, and this was already mentioned by one of our listeners, but that's Everything Everywhere All at Once. Did you watch the trailer for that?
I have not, no.
Oh my gosh, as soon as we're done, watch the trailer, pull it up on YouTube, because this movie looks awesome. So it's directed by 2 directors, both named Daniel, which is why it's a film from Daniels. It's Daniel Scheinert and Daniel Kwan. And Michelle Yeoh stars in it, and I don't even really understand what the story is, but it looks really, really cool. And Michelle Yeoh plays this like Chinese immigrant who suddenly gets swept up in something and has to save the world. And it's got a lot of visual effects in it. It's got a lot of action. It has something to do with a multiverse, I think. Like, it looks amazing. So that was a really great trailer, because I had heard of the title and I knew Michelle Yeoh was in it, but I did not know anything about it. I still don't feel like I do. But watching the trailer, I was like, I need this right now. So
sounds exciting. Well,
yes.
Another one for me, and again, I was just like, what else is coming out this year? And I was just like, wow, Scream 5.
Yeah, that's coming out in like a couple weeks.
Yeah, I know. It's just like, which is actually, it should be 5 Cream.
I know. Hello.
I don't know.
It was right there.
I don't know, like, why they're pushing no, it's called Scream. It's just like, no, it is not. It never was.
Nope.
Again, I think this is going to be the first, it'll be the first Scream film without Wes Craven, which is, worry making. But at the same time, I'm interested, and I really hope that they do it justice, but I am excited to see it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I love the Scream films. It's crazy that it had its 25th anniversary this year, the first one, because I was an adult when the first movie came out, technically. And it just, I can't believe it's been 25 years. But I love that franchise. We've talked at length about how much we love that franchise. And while I am a little bit nervous to see it go on without Wes Craven, I would have still been skeptical of it even if he was directing, just because even though he has a lot of really great films, you never know when a new sequel comes if it's gonna if it's gonna work or not. So yeah.
Yes, I hope that it does justice to the franchise, because I have enjoyed
Yeah.
every single one of the Scream films. So don't fuck this up for me.
Darn right. Okay. Did you have any other like 22 releases that you wanted to talk about? I have one more.
I just had one and now I forgot about it. God damn. Oh, this one, I can't really say that I'm excited about it anymore, but I really just want it to come out so that I can see it and put it behind me. Death on the Nile. I really just want this movie to come out. And I mean, I feel sorry for this movie, honestly, because it's not this film's fault. First there was the pandemic, and then Armie Hammer is a serial killer or something, we don't know, but he's a horrible human being. And now it's just like, okay, what? I mean, I'm certain that this one was just going to get dumped somewhere, but just release it so we can see it and let it be over with, and we can all move on with our lives.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, it's just kind of this like weight on their shoulders they just need to get rid of.
It's just like, guys, do something with it, please.
Just rip off the Band-Aid. Just do it. I mean, the movie itself cannot be worse than the buzz surrounding it, so... Yeah.
I reasonably expect that the film is going to be fun, actually.
Yeah.
It just has all of this baggage attached to it.
Yep.
Again, no fault of the film itself, but wow.
Yeah, that's rough. One of mine that people were talking about it, but it wasn't until you sent me the trailer that I was like, oh, okay, I want to watch this, and that was The Lost City.
Yeah!
With Sandra Bullock, Channing Tatum, Daniel Radcliffe, super hot, like, forest-dwelling Brad Pitt. Yeah, this looks so much fun. I think you were absolutely right when you said it looks like Jewel in the Nile or Romancing the Stone. Like, it just kind of has that vibe to it. So it's like, yes, I am there. And well, it's so funny because it was like just a few weeks ago, somebody, like, I was in a conversation with somebody about Channing Tatum for some reason. And I was just like, I don't know why he doesn't do more comedies. He's really funny when he does comedies. And then it was like, then we got that trailer for Dog, which, I mean, that's not going to be good, but it looks like it's got some, he's trying to be funny. And then this one, I was like, this is what I'm talking about. This is the movies that he needs to be making. So, yeah. Yep.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that as well. And also, I said this before, props to Sandra Bullock, who's like 57 years old, and her leading man is 41. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad to see that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yep. So, those are some 22 releases we're excited about. Lauren, are there any non-new movies that you have on your list, or filmmakers you'd like to explore, genres you want to dive into more? What are some of your resolutions for 22?
I want to watch more Czech New Wave films. I've seen a few of them, and I've always enjoyed them. I really like a lot of just generalizing Eastern European filmmakers, so Polish and Czech and Slovak filmmakers, and I want to see more of those because they're fascinating films and have a great dark sense of humor a lot of the time. Very dry sense of humor. And so I definitely want to watch more of those. I also do, like, a big gap in my film knowledge is particularly Italian films post neorealism. So as you're getting into the 60s and 70s and getting into films like the ones that are made by Lina Wertmuller, it seems like there's a shift that happens in Italian filmmaking. I've seen a lot of Giallo films, but I haven't seen a lot of just some of the more art house or more mainstream films from Italy in that period.
Cool. One of mine, and we did this on Citizen Dame on the website a couple years ago, back when we still had Kristen and Kimberly with us. And at the time, I had set one of mine to watch just more films from India. And I never really did that. Like, that just kind of never happened. So this is the year. I really do want to explore more more films from India, because that film industry is huge in some places. In some ways, it's bigger than the industry here in Hollywood. It just doesn't get as much attention. So there's so many different. I mean, they have all different types. We have this view in our minds of like the Bollywood film, but they have lots of different genres and types of films too. And yeah, and so I really want to dive into more of those.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I'm very light on Indian films as well.
Yeah.
Some of it, honestly, I'll be completely honest, some of it is length. Because even some of the non-Bollywood, some of the older films are still like 2.5 hours long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they tend to not be short, but it's pretty cool because Netflix has really, and we can say all kinds of things that are not positive about Netflix, but I think that their commitment to international film, especially with like some of the South Korean stuff that we're seeing more of now, and Indian film, it's really great. So there's lots of stuff that's available on Netflix, but it's also just in general becoming easier to find and access films from lots of parts of the world. So yeah. Did you have any others?
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned Korean films, because I was just thinking, like, I have not seen many Korean films. Again, one of those big industries, and it's a younger industry in a lot of ways. But, and I've seen some of the big ones, particularly the ones that get a lot of play in the United States. But the fact that we have a lot of, like you're saying, a lot of access to different kinds of films, and ones that aren't getting, big theater releases in the US, I do want to try to watch more Korean films. Again, not bad on their horror films, but some of the more mainstream films, not so, like mainstream films, art house films, etc., not as strong, and I would really like to try to get into those more.
Awesome. As far as actors or anything like that, I really want to see, I'm very underwatched on the films of Anna May Wong, and so I really want to dive in and see some of her work this year.
I mentioned this last week. Start with Shanghai Express.
Yeah, I need to.
If you haven't seen it, I was gonna say.
You know what? I have not. That was one that was like on my list, and then I didn't watch it, and now it's hard to find. So, but
just buy the collection. Yeah, it's very good. It is a very good film.
Awesome, thank you. Do you have any actors or actresses you'd like to explore?
No particular actors or actresses. I do want to just generally see more female filmmakers. I keep on trying to get more female filmmakers into my lineup, and then I tend to suddenly fall back on like Hitchcock. And yeah, I really do want to see. I am hoping that the renewed interest in female filmmakers generally in the United States is going to mean that we will see more of those films getting restored and released. Because one of the issues is that, someone like Dorothy Arzner, where she has this whole body of work, but we only see, a few of her films, and others are like in very weak public domain prints or aren't available at all. And it would be nice to actually see those get restored and be able to experience them the way that we should experience them. It's tough being like, oh, this is a great filmmaker, when you have to watch their film in like a poppy audio, barely digital transfer.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was B. Peterson had a podcast and was working through a lot of films from like just underknown or marginalized directors and stuff, and they had put together a collection that, of course, they don't have the rights to it, so they can't like distribute it, but that took a lot of work just to even track down some of her stuff, and there were other things that they weren't even able to get access to from Arzner. So yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, that's one of my big things too this year. Is I every year I try to seek out some films from female directors that I haven't seen before, and I think personally I would like to get to the point where at the end of the year I've seen more films directed by women than men.
Yes, that would be nice. That'd be nice. I also will say, I think I'm going to do, I don't know what they're calling it exactly, but January.
What's that?
watching giallo films in January.
Oh.
You know, we've had November, we get spooky season, but yes, because yes, listeners, I have watched many giallo films, despite that one random guy who still makes me mad, claiming that I've only seen Suspiria. Fuck you. But I haven't seen enough, and I want to see more. So yeah, I might try to do that this January.
Cool. Yeah, there. You were right when you directed me. There's still a bunch on Shudder. I need to jump in. So yeah, cool. All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
No, watch more movies. Watch movies get out of your comfort zones. It's so easy to fall into kind of a rut. Like I say, I always fall back on certain types of films, but there's so much good stuff out there. And like you were saying, Karen, it's so available now. There's so many different things that we can watch. And it can be difficult to figure out what to watch.
Yeah.
And what is, worth seeing and what isn't. But, start somewhere at least.
Yeah, that's a lot of times my biggest problem is like I literally have basically a subscription to everything you could want to pay for, and there are times where I'm just like I have too many choices. I need to narrow this down.
Yeah,
Twitter helps sometimes. I'll be like, should I watch this or this? But yeah, it's that's the biggest challenge sometimes is that there's too many options. So. But that's a good challenge. I would prefer that to not being able to access things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Definitely watch more movies. Watch more movies directed by women.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening and for supporting the show over the year. We do have a couple of more episodes we're going to have as we finish things out. We do want to talk about some of our favorite things from 2021. I'm already a year ahead. I just really want the pandemic to be over. Anyway, but we do want to thank you all for your support. We especially want to thank our patrons who help keep the show going and helped us with the ability to transition to a website that is on its way to becoming beautiful. I know it's a little bit clunky right now and it doesn't look pretty, but it will. Just trust us on this. It's coming. So but anyway, special thanks to Adriana, Ali, Connor, Heather, James, Kathleen, Carriotta, Mason, Matt, Michelle, Monty, Nanina, Robert, Steve, Sharon, Tao, and Will. And if you would like to join our Patreon and become one of them, that's patreon.com/citizendame. One of the things in 2022 is we are going to have, I know we say this all the time, but we really are going to have more bonus episodes, more bonus content that's not even necessarily episodes that will be coming to Patreon. So yeah. Our Zazzle store is going to be getting a makeover too. We've got lots of big changes that are coming. So, but for the time being, Zazzle's still the same, zazzle.com/citizendamepod. And our Ko-Fi is ko-fi.com/citizendame. To find more of our written work, you can go to citizendamepod.com. And if you'd like to email us, that's citizendamepod@gmail.com. You can also find us on the social medias. That is Twitter and Instagram @CitizenDamePod and Letterboxd @CitizenDame. Lauren, where are you?
I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd @LHBusiness.
And I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd @Karen M. Peterson. So thank you all so much, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.